Welcome back to Insects for Fun, the show where we dive into the surprising, the strange, and the spectacular corners of insect life. Today, we're talking about an insect that has probably fooled you before. Maybe you saw it on a summer evening, hovering like a jewel over your garden flowers. You might have even thought you were looking at a hummingbird. But this episode isn't just about identifying a common case of mistaken identity. We're going deeper into the physics of hovering flight, the art of mimicry, and the strange evolutionary story that led a humble moth to master the sky. When it comes to hummingbird moths, there are a few main species that wear this disguise. In North America, the main one is Hemaris thysbe, commonly known as the hummingbird clearwing moth. It's a fuzzy russet and green creature with transparent wings. Although most of the Hemaris I've seen up in the northeast of the US are more red, orange, and black than green. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, we've got Macroglossum stellatarum, the hummingbird hawk moth, which performs the same aerial ballet from Europe to Japan. This species I actually attempted to raise in captivity for my research at the University of Hawaii, Manoa, and it proved to be incredibly difficult for several reasons, which I'll get into later. So, both of these hummingbird species belong to the family Sphingidae, aka the hawk or sphinx moth family. These are the fastest moths in the world, and are also known for their incredible aerial control, which also explains the common name given to their family, hawk moth. When it comes to the genus and species names, they give us a little bit more detail. For example, Macroglossum means large tongue, because these do in fact have incredibly long proboscises. Meanwhile, Hemaris comes from the Greek hemera, meaning day, because you won't see these at night. Macroglossum, unlike Hemaris, are technically crepuscular, which means they're only active at dawn and dusk or sometimes during the day with overcast. This was one of the reasons why they were incredibly difficult to raise. For example, they won't actively feed or fly naturally in captivity under artificial lighting. The slightest light imbalance causes them to fly in weird spirals or behave in other strange ways. I did have some success by letting some go free in a greenhouse, but that wasn't a long-term solution for mass breeding, because turns out they're also picky about laying eggs. Hemaris might be easier, but I haven't actually tried that one. Maybe I will when I go back to America. Now, speaking of behavior, if you've ever seen a hummingbird moth in motion, you know the word hover doesn't do it justice. They move like tiny machines, darting and pausing with mechanical precision. Their wings actually beat 70 to 85 times per second, which is much faster than your average moth and butterfly. For example, most moths are between 10 to 20 times per second, and butterflies between 5 and 12. Inside their fuzzy thorax lies a marvel of engineering. 2 sets of flight muscles that flex and store energy in the exoskeleton like springs. The wings trace a figure-8 path in the air, allowing perfect stability mid-hover. This same motion is what hummingbirds use, but in the moth's case, it's achieved through an entirely different anatomy. And then there's that proboscis, a flexible coiled straw that can reach deep into tubular flowers like honeysuckle, bee balm, and petunias. They never land. They feed in midair, keeping their balance even as the flowers sway. Each sip of nectar becomes an act of pollination, dusting them with pollen and connecting one blossom to another. Now, the big question, why mimic a hummingbird? Why would a moth evolve to look and move like a bird in general? Well, it comes down to convergent evolution. Nature's habit of finding the same solutions in different species. The hummingbird moth's greatest threat is also its teacher, birds. Birds often hesitate to attack other birds, so behaving like one can be a very effective disguise. This is what scientists call motion mimicry. Camouflage not in color or pattern, but in behavior. Instead of blending in, the moth survives by being recognizable as something else entirely. Hoverflies mimic bees, stick insects mimic twigs. The hummingbird moth mimics a bird in both sight and sound. Evolution over countless generations sculpted this performance. The moth that flew most like hummingbirds survived longer and passed on their genes. The result? is a moth so bird-like that even expert observers sometimes have to double take. Let's now line up the mimic and the model. Hummingbirds are warm-blooded vertebrates, powered by a heart that can beat over 1,000 times per minute. Their metabolisms burn so fast that they have to feed constantly just to stay alive. Hummingbird moths are, of course, a bit different. Cold-blooded, exoskeleton-clad, their hearts only beating maybe 5 or 6 times per second. Yet they fly just as gracefully, but on far less fuel. Both species beat their wings in a figure-8 motion, both feed on nectar, and both can see ultraviolet light. Yet, one does this with bones and feathers, and the other with chitin and scale-covered wings. Two entirely different blueprints, but one shared miracle. Now, beyond their beauty and mimicry, hummingbird moths are unsung heroes of pollination. Their long tongues reach deep into flowers that bees simply can't access, helping plants cross-pollinate and reproduce. In Europe, Macroglossum stellatarum plays a key role in pollinating flowers that open at dusk, filling the gap when bees retire and hummingbirds are nowhere to be found. And yes, hummingbirds are in fact nowhere to be found in Europe because they're native to the Americas and simply just don't exist in Europe or Japan. But we've talked a lot about the bird-looking part of these insects, so now we're going to look at what happens to get to that point. You see, before these creatures take to the air, they start life grounded as plump green hornworm caterpillars with a harmless spike on their tail. They feed on honeysuckle, bedstraw, certain vines, and dogbane until they're ready to pupate. These caterpillars tend to appear from late spring through midsummer, often in 2 or even 3 generations depending on the region. In warmer climates, you might see them well into early autumn, with each generation developing a bit faster under higher temperatures. They're remarkably good at blending in, so it's kind of hard to find them actually. And when threatened, they arch their back into an S shape and wriggle their horns to startle predators. Younger instars are often lighter and more delicate, while older ones grow heavier and can reach up to 5 centimeters in length. Interestingly, their color can shift slightly with diet and age, and right before pupation, they often take on a brownish hue that helps them blend in with soil and fallen leaves. The reason is because a lot of these actually pupate in the ground. When it comes time for metamorphosis, these caterpillars usually make a cocoon buried in leaf litter or, again, completely bury themselves in the ground. People have mistaken hummingbird moths for centuries. In Europe, they were once called bee hawk moths and thought to be supernatural bird spirits. In Japan, they're affectionately known as bird moths, appearing in folklore as gentle messengers of summer. Even now, viral videos spread across the internet. Clips of hummingbird moths captioned "tiny hummingbirds" or "baby birds," and honestly, you can't blame anyone because they move and sound exactly like their avian namesakes. The line between bird and insect feels pretty paper thin on this one. And with that, we're gonna wrap up this episode of Insects for Fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, please rate the show 5 stars wherever you listen. It really helps a lot. And speaking of other ways you can help, make sure to go subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you haven't yet, go check out the Patreon. There's ad-free episodes, bonus episodes. I believe we're at 31 bonus episodes now. I drop 1 or 2 every month. If I miss a month, I definitely do 2 the next. And there's also vlogs, which are pretty long, longer than a lot of my regular episodes actually. And there will definitely be a lot more bonuses in the future.